The clock tower located at the end of the fog fjord in Dead Cells is probably tied with the Forgotten Sepulchre in terms of how difficult the level is to complete. With more of the spike traps and rotating spike balls that were first introduced in the Promenade of the Condemned, as well as all new deadlier enemies, this place is one I regularly struggle in and often don't complete. I like that the things you climb in this level look like radio tower support structures. I like the metal lattice work. I also enjoy the largely vertical level design. The clock tower level is split up into a few towers connected by a couple bridges. The different towers that make up the clock tower level are extremely tall, and most of this level will have you exploring your way upwards and then teleporting back down to a bridge to move on to the next tower. You can't really explore below the clock tower, and I think this is because this level is designed to push you even higher above the castle and its lower levels. The clock tower soars to dizzying heights and it's not even the highest level, although I'm fairly certain it starts and continues up higher than the ramparts level that is just before the incomplete one boss fight that is the first boss fight of this game. This level is a challenge to fully explore and escape. This is because you have to find keys to progress past this level, just like the fog fjord below and before this place. There's a watchmaker's key that leads to the clock room, and the clock tower key that I haven't used or found before. The clock room leads to the assassin boss fight, which is the third boss in the game. Before I do a video on that boss, I want to go back and show the second boss, called the Watcher, and the levels leading up to that boss and just after it. There are 5 entire levels you can explore before trying to defeat the assassin located at the top of the clock tower. I'm not sure if the cavern region has been released yet. It would be the 6th region you can explore that I haven't shown off yet. But if it's still not in the game, I can't exactly worry about it right now. Nor should I, considering the fact that I got ahead of myself and went straight to the level right before the final boss. This level is almost always where my journey ends because it is at least as large as the fog fjord before it, but has deadlier enemies, plus traps to watch out for. I like that if you're just trying to rush the final boss and complete the game, you either go to the Forgotten Sepulchre below the fog fjord, or the clock tower above it. Everything in this level does a ton of damage to you if it hits, and not only that, the confined spaces of the tower combined with the options to only go up or down in most places makes this level hard to progress through. I don't think I've ever cleared out all the enemies in this level before, and I know I didn't do it during the gameplay I recorded for this video. Once I run out of healing charges, I tend to focus less on acquiring more cells and practicing fighting enemies, and entirely on finding the exit to the level. I've found all 3 bosses so far, but I've still only got 2 runes as of recording and editing this video. I want to find the others so I can show more of this game. As of recording this video, I still haven't gone back to the ossuary to collect the new rune located there, nor have I gone to the Slumbering Sanctuary to collect the final rune located there. Not only that, I find myself becoming more engrossed in the world and level design of this game the more I progress through it. I don't just want to beat the game for the sake of accomplishment anymore, I want to complete the game to continue finding out more about this game world's history and design. I also want to know how the giant skeleton in your prison cell starting point factors into everything. How did it even get in there? I like that your prison cell is not only the starting point of the game, but it's sort of the middle of the castle that is this game's world. From the area outside your cell, you can go down to the sewers and the prison depths below that. Below the prison depths is the ossuary. And both the old sewers and the prison depths can now only be reached after obtaining the 3rd and 4th runes added to the game. Or you can go up from your prison cell to the Promenade of the Condemned, up further to the ramparts and the Black Bridge below them on the other side and across the fog fjord where you can ascend to the clock tower here or descend to the Forgotten Sepulchre. The ossuary also leads to the Black Bridge and the incomplete one boss fight. The traps in this clock tower are placed in such a way as to make it incredibly difficult to avoid them while fighting enemies. If you thought the Promenade of the Condemned was a good indicator of where and how traps would be placed, you'll likely be frustratingly unprepared for the traps in this level. Even though most of them are still just spike strips and spinning maces, the placement of them and the confined spaces provided by each tower make them far more dangerous than traps found in previous levels. As you can see, the developers are not afraid to stick spinning maces where you have to climb up at, nor are they going to shy away from placing some spikes on the corner of a ledge to prevent you from catching it and climbing up. Not to mention the placement of the enemies within these traps. It's fun, but incredibly difficult to avoid spikes and spinning maces while dodging these enemies and their attacks. There are bells within the clock tower that you can hit with your ranged weapons, and if there are enemies nearby, the ringing of the bell will attract them and get them to attack you. I consider them to be the most interesting and potentially deadly trap. They blend into the background of the towers fairly well and don't stand out against the brown of the walls as much as the gray of the spikes and maces does. The bells will also attract ranged weapon attacks such as these throwing knives. It makes avoiding them more difficult or forces you to use melee weapons and skills to deal with the enemies if you want to avoid aggravating the other enemies above or below you that haven't joined the fight. The fewer enemies you have to fight at once, the easier this level will be to survive. These aren't the kind of enemies you want to bunch together to try and take out with area of effect and damage over time attacks. They have so much health, they're best engaged one at a time if possible. The archers and regular zombies within this level aren't too much of a problem, and neither is the bat that makes another appearance, but the new enemies introduced by the clock tower are quite a threat. There's a bombardier, who's similar to the grenadier from the previous levels, only far deadlier. Instead of just shooting a bomb at you through the level, these enemies have a bomb that explodes and spawns 3 smaller bombs around it that also explode, giving you several projectiles to avoid. I was lucky enough not to run into a spinner enemy during this run of the clock tower, but there are giant enemies with chains that rapidly spin around to chase and attack you. They can quickly change directions to chase you if you roll past them, but they can't jump or teleport, so they can only fight you on whatever flat patch of the level they happen to have spawned on. I had to deal with several cannibals, though. They're those big enemies with the dual giant swords that I try my best to stay away from. They're increasingly fast with their 3-hit attack, and they can cancel that attack chain if they missed you with it. If there's enough space for them to do so, they'll hop away from you before hopping towards you to try and hit you with their chain of attacks. They can also hop backwards and leave a bomb in the spot where they were. They're definitely tough opponents and would be a challenge in any level, but unfortunately, from what I can tell they are only found in this level, where the cramped spaces and ability to only go up or down to escape makes these foes much more challenging than they would be in a more open environment. The other enemy introduced in this level isn't much of a threat on their own, but when paired with any other can provide a deadly challenge. They are the little trackers that have large daggers that will deal a critical hit if they hit you in the back with it. To help them achieve this goal, they also have the ability to not just teleport near you, but to specifically teleport behind you, which is a large part of what makes them so deadly when paired with any other foes. Worrying about getting critically backstabbed makes it harder to focus on the deadlier enemies in the clock tower that are more likely to kill you. This run through the clock tower level also shows off another feature of the game I wanted to mention and warn players of before they accidentally stumbled across it. Not all of the treasure chests in this game are good. Obviously by now you probably know that cursed treasure chests are to be opened only in certain instances, such as you having cleared the level or being confident that you can kill 10 enemies without getting hit to remove the curse. But the blue treasure chests can also be traps filled with enemies instead of sweet loot to help you on your journey. The particular bunch of enemies I had to contend with was largely flying enemies, as most trap chests in this game are, but what struck me as most interesting about it is that they were largely corpse biters, the brown flying biters from the graveyard and prison depths. As far as I know, they're not naturally found in the clock tower and it was a pleasantly nasty surprise to have to deal with them. As you see, I wanted to run away from them, but was unsuccessful. Still, it brings up another thing I wanted to mention. If you're in a tough spot and want to escape, the teleporters found throughout the levels can usually be used to escape attacking enemies. If you teleport far enough away, no enemy should be able to chase you, but I haven't tested it since the Foundry update. At the very least, it will give you that moment of safety needed to heal if you're in danger of dying. As you can tell from the gameplay you're watching, I tend to try and play it safe the further I get in the game. Like I've mentioned before, I've been playing this game a lot and am still unable to beat it. I only recently became able to make my way through the clock tower itself, which is good, because I need to be able to beat the level in order to talk about it, right? Otherwise, what's the point in listening to me discuss it and try to offer advice on completing it? Anyway, with how many traps and the particular types of enemies within this level, it's recommended to fight your way through this level at a safe distance from the enemies. There are so many enemies and the traps are placed so well, it's not recommended to rush in and fight with your sword. Even if you have the fastest of reflexes and can avoid all the traps while fighting, you can't dodge all the attacks from all the different enemies. Given how deadly they are, I'm actually kind of glad most of the enemies introduced in the clock tower level are actually only found here in the clock tower level and won't have to be dealt with later in the game. Speaking of the game, I like that this particular level is designed in such a way that you don't have to worry about falling to your death or accidentally jumping or rolling out of the tower like you had to worry about back on the ramparts. The clock tower level is completely enclosed and the only open areas of it are the bridges connecting them. Bridges that you can't fall through, which is nice, because they definitely could have gotten away with having a collapsed bridge section you could fall through. With that, I think I'm going to end this video, or at least end my discussion of this level. There's not much more to say and there are still a few minutes of gameplay before I reach the end of the level. If you have any questions or comments about the clock tower level or Dead Cells in general, please feel free to leave them in the section below. If you enjoyed this video or are just interested in the game in general, consider getting it on Steam or whichever console you might have. I hope you enjoy the remaining bit of gameplay. And stay safe till next time. Error. Error. Error.